I like to take the time to go into a transition of reflecting, of understanding, and of being. What's up, family? I am your host, Angel Rios, founder of the Rally Cry and creator of Enough Said. And man, it feels so good to be here to talk about ways that we can self-improve, ways that we can build relationships, and ways we could break down the stigma, break down the stigma of how we take care of ourselves from what we hear and actually making it sense to us. And the previous episode was just an audio only. It was when I was on my way to go see my mom and be with my girlfriend to, spend Thanksgiving. And I hope your Thanksgiving went well. And I found that, a lot of you guys really enjoyed that episode, but also appreciated on me coming back. I really wanted to say I didn't forget you guys. And I really had to take the time to go in a hiatus after starting my first semester in my master's program so that I can be a social worker, so that I can get the fundamentals and see what I've been learning actually has been working. And I think I've gotten a lot of reassurance with my master's program. And, even with my classmates, the kind of conversations we had, the kind of research we had to go into, the evidence that we had to find based on studies has been a wholesome experience. But it also has been an experience where it took a lot out of me. It took a lot of energy from me. And we know it's the holidays. We got Christmas right around the corner, and we got many of us that is getting presents for our kids, getting presents for our friends or significant other family members, a whole 9 yards about giving. And even when it comes from giving, we have to make sure that we give back to ourselves. And it's crazy because when I was in the program, a lot of my professors, different professors, would say, you got to make sure that you got to give back to yourself and have a self-care day, right? We hear that a lot. And it's interesting because it's a master's program, and they're just letting us know in the beginning of the semester, by the way, you're going to want to make sure you have your days that you take a break. And what I love about the program too, if you guys don't know, I'm going to Westfield State. They're very flexible with assignments and just being able to give you the flexibility of when to submit it. Of course, communication is key, but what I love is that they allow to be mindful about, this is a lot of work. And despite from my experience in my master's program, the same applies to you. You got to think about all the work that you're putting in, even if it is just a 9-to-5 job, even if it is, having a part-time job, having kids, even if it's just having kids, whatever that is, even if it's going over something that it may be so challenging, you're trying to overcome something that you've been feeling. That takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of focus. It takes a lot of reflection. And I can't stress it enough. As much of this month is about giving and getting presents, I want you to be mindful that you got to also give back to yourself and literally be present in the moment. And, in my relationship, I find that, giving yourself to the present is allowing yourself to appreciate what's going on right now. I think we stress too much about, someone's expectations, how the outcome is going to be, and, if it's going to go the way that we're planning it to be. We get very anxious. Sometimes we even get depressed because we're thinking about it so much. And it's definitely easier said than done. You can't just, think about something and then just let it go. It's probably going to be pondering in your mind for a while. But the whole point is that you want to think about it, but then eventually let it go. You don't want to keep ruminating in your head or keep pondering about the thing that you're thinking about. It could be a majority of things. I feel like around this holidays, a lot of things be going up in our mind. But you don't want it to consume you to a point where you almost feel like you're not enough. You start thinking about the things that you're doing. And that's why it's important that you need to think about whatever it is that you're working towards, or whatever is the thing that you've been doing. You want to ask yourself, like, what is the why? What is my purpose? Why am I working so hard? Because, my master's program, Enough Said, the Rally Cry, and doing other things that is in the community and trying to network and find people, my circle, it can be overwhelming. And I realize that I can't always have time to be able to go do that thing that I want to do because I'm only one person. Trust me, if I can multiply myself and have myself do all these things at once, that would be great. But it's not realistic. And what I love about it, of not being realistic, is that you don't want to be everywhere. You want to be where exactly you want to be. You want to be where you feel fulfilled. You want to be where you feel like you need to be, where you want to prioritize. And prioritizing doesn't necessarily have to be the action of what you're doing, but the mindset of how you treat yourself when you're doing it. And I think it's one of those metaphors that I think about. You could have all the gas in your tank, but eventually you got to stop by a gas station and refill. You got to stop and rejuvenate and fill your tank again. And I think sometimes when we think about stopping something or not giving attention towards something, it's almost like as if we're giving up. Or we might hear other people that say, hey, why are you not giving me attention? Or, hey, how come you haven't been, out and about and, being engaged and stuff like that? Or, hey, something's different about you. I think that's a societal expectation. And what's crazy is that we live in a society that is all about encouraging change. But sometimes you're around people that once you change, people don't like the fact that you change. And of course, there's always a double-sided coin when it comes to change. Can change be for the worse? Yes. Can change be for the best? Absolutely. Now, it's important for you to reflect and see why people are coming to you about how you're acting, how you're behaving, or maybe just your attitude in general. And of course, it could be one of those days, but exactly that. It's one of those days. Those days that you have to just make sure that you give back to yourself and not feeling like you have to be judged by someone you've been around, or if it's your coworker, your significant other, your family member, whomever. You shouldn't have to feel like to always explain yourself. Sometimes you just want to be. And it's something that I realize amongst my peers in my relationship. And you want to make sure that you allow yourself to be, but also keep in mind that other people are allowed to be. That you don't always need an explanation, but it's always good to have some communication of what's going on. And I feel like that's when, boundaries come in. We think about self-care as, not doing anything, which is part of the equation. But we also have to think about when you are giving back to yourself, it's really about putting up a boundary. And those boundaries look like, hey, I would love to be a part of this. I know I said yes, but some things came up and I really want to give back to myself. Or, hey, I remember I told you I wanted to go to this, and that. However, I feel not so great right now, or I don't have enough energy, and I want to make sure that I have enough energy to give you all of me. And it's really about how you frame that conversation, being able to communicate and let them know, because just because it's one of those days doesn't mean you completely disregard everything that's going on. Because when you disregard everything, you then no longer living in your element. And you still had to be mindful of things. There's a balance to it. And you want to make sure you're doing your thing. You want to make sure that you are giving back to yourself, if that's watching your favorite show, or if that's absolutely doing nothing, or if that's writing in a book, or if that's going for a walk, or if it's going and planning that activity that you wanted to do with your significant other, your friend, your family, especially around the holidays. We want to live the experience. And sometimes we're so focused on one kind of experience that we lose touch of other types of experiences. Like, I'm always working and I get, pretty stressed out, not only because of the work, but because I'm not giving myself the chance to be able to experience other things. We are diverse people. We allow ourselves to be indulged in so many types of activities and interests. That's what makes us whole. It's not one thing that we do. The work that you do or what you do for a profession isn't who you are. It's just what you do. If you were to have that taken away from you, what is left? Is to say that you're just that profession that you're doing? You're more than that. And that's why you got to give more to the being that is yourself, so you can rejuvenate and give back to the people, so that you can give your best effort. Because you can think about the things that you want to do that is giving back to yourself. You can think about the things that is giving back to the people. But the first thing is being able to have the energy to do it. And it's one of those things you have to keep reminding yourself. There's times where I'm like, yo, I need to take a break, and then I end up not taking a break. I indulge myself in doing something else that is probably productive. And I have realized that's another thing that I have to be disciplined about. Discipline is really about telling myself something and owning up to that thing that I told myself, so that I can go and do it. And sometimes things take time. And it's all about the effort. It's all about what you're willing to give and what are you probably willing to give up. Because sometimes when you're giving something, you're letting go of something else. So keeping in mind that, hey, around the holidays, it's all about giving, but it's never about overextending yourself. Because when you overextend yourself, I mean, metaphorically speaking, if I put out my hand and I'm overextending, after a while, my muscle gonna hurt because I'm probably gonna pull a muscle. And we're not about pulling any muscles. We're not about pulling any legs. We're just about being, and so that we can be around people that love us, accept us, and respect us. Because that's exactly what we want. And I find that, I've learned a lot in the time that I've had my hiatus. 3 months, something that I really wanted to give back to myself. That I had to give back to myself so that I can give back to you guys. And I really appreciate you guys giving me that patience, giving me that space. I see that you guys have been getting into other episodes that we've been previously done in the past. And it's really good to see that you guys are really loving the content that has been prior, but also what more is there to come. I'm excited with the lighting that has been put in and then a couple of things. I think Cleo's in the back right there if you haven't noticed. Yeah, that's Cleo, my cat. And, man, it's just one of those things that I'm really grateful to be able to acknowledge, to give back to myself, but then also having you guys to allow me to do that. So next year is going to be great, and there'll be one more episode before the new year, but it's really right around the corner. And just remember, giving is great, but giving to yourself first so you don't pour out of an empty cup is something that you want to make sure that you keep in mind of. Taking a break doesn't mean that you're giving up. It means being mindful that you had to step back so that you can get back. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I hope you guys are listening on your favorite podcast platform. If that's YouTube, if that's Apple or Spotify, or whichever more that is your favorite. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And remember, you are meant to give. You are a giving. And every day is a given opportunity. So until next time, you guys be easy. Peace.